All right, hey guys, we're going to talk a little bit about the trade war here. Buckle up. So phase one of the tariffs, we're going to talk about Mexico first. Phase one, the goal of the tariffs was to secure the border. Total success. I can't believe how fast that worked. And I firmly believe that if Trump would have just slowed his roll by about 6 months and just kind of slowly rolled out a lot of these ideas, he'd be getting a lot more support from the global world than he is right now. Him attacking Canada and Mexico and Ukraine and the EU and China at the same time, he's biting off a lot. However, Americans, a lot of us, we're ready to fight this fight. I know a lot of you didn't vote for it and you're kind of getting drug into it, but fucking sucks to suck, man. We get drug into the globalist politics that you guys vote for too. So welcome to the show. Anyway, second round of tariffs in Mexico is a little bit more clandestine. We don't know why he's doing this. They say, oh, he created this deal, blah, 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 whatever. Deals change. Sorry. World is moving fast paced. What you said yesterday doesn't really even exist anymore. It's only what's happening now as new information comes to light. What is the number one export of Mexico to the United States? Cars and car parts. The one thing you also need to understand is this is not an issue just of American manufacturing. Every single car manufacturer in the entire world is trying to get in on this cheap labor market. Eventually, that cheap labor market isn't going to be so cheap as the middle class grows in Mexico, which is very good that they keep the cartels around to ensure that the middle class is always suppressed with crime rates. Now it starts to make a little bit more sense why Mexico has never cracked down on the cartels. They get kickbacks in the form of economic development, okay? This is all according to plan for them. So a lot of these companies on the stock market are then tied to the success of other nations. And that's just not sustainable because eventually every source of income will leave. That's the only possible conclusion to capitalism. This idea that everything is going to be cheap forever, not going to happen, okay? One of the realities of the situation is that if you want to sell a vehicle inside of a market, it's going to come down to manufacturing that vehicle inside that market and thus giving money to the people who are going to then buy your cars. You see what I'm saying? It's the same reason that Ford invented the 5-day work week, so that way his people could go out and actually spend the money that they make on the cars that they make. It didn't take the Mexican president to negotiate away these deals. It was the auto manufacturers, okay? So we're going to see what happens. Just like everything under a Trump presidency, you have to wait and see, and you have to uncover it as it's happening, and you have to position yourself to take advantage of the liquidity that is about to happen. This stock market crash, if it happens, you can make a lot of money. You need to make the right decisions, but once you understand that we're basically shaking up a champagne bottle with all of this liquidity that's going to be floating around in the market as people are selling off, we're going to continually put downward pressure on the markets. It's like taking a champagne bottle, shaking it up, and then taking the contents of it and pushing it under a hydraulic press. Eventually, something is going to break. So, Mexican tariffs. We have one tremendous success with the border ones, and now we need to fight the auto manufacturers. Trump gave them until April to make a decision on if they're coming back. I guarantee we're going to see some kind of a reopening of these manufacturing facilities in the United States. They might not be where I live, but a success for other Americans is a success for me. That's all I care about. I'm already dealing with my own battles with Caterpillar as they fucking have completely abandoned these small communities. Canada's where it gets a little bit murky. Once you understand that Canada is not really that large of an economy and 90% of their oil exports go to the United States, you can kind of get an understanding for what is happening here. So Canada had one of the worst prime ministers that they've basically ever had, and he reigned for 10 years. He had an approval rating of about 27%. When he left Canada, he got a little bit of a boost because of these tariffs, and that kind of pisses me off because I really wish Trump would have just paused these things with Canada and let them get Trudeau the fuck out under regular circumstances. Now they have installed a central banker at the head of their state. Now, let's take a look at what the primary goal of central bankers are. They know economies and they know loans, and they know how to liquidate assets. So you have to understand that Alberta has consistently been not a big fan of Canada. Alberta is the natural resource home of Canada, and they are basically the money factory for all of Canada. They're supporting everything else. All of the taxes, carbon taxes, whatever have you, all this environmental stuff, it comes at the expense of Alberta's economy and the people that live in Alberta. There has been they're basically the Texas of Canada. to put it into perspective. Correct me if I'm mistaken, Canadians. So essentially, you have the rest of Canada fighting this trade war on behalf of central bankers and people that aren't even in Alberta at the expense of Alberta. Canada exports 90% of their oil to us. We import about 25% of our energy from Canada, and that a lot of that goes into, the liberal states. That number might change depending on really what you're looking at. I'm sure it's probably 25% of states that are importing their energy from Canada are getting it from Canada. You know what I'm saying? It's not 25% of the total output of the it's not 25% of the total power wattage of the United States, So remember, Canada is threatening people with higher prices in the United States that didn't vote for Trump in the first place. These are northern states. Typically, they are more liberal. They are fighting a war that they have already won. All Canada is trying to do with this trade war is cut off their own thumb to spite their face. I truly believe the only reason they're doing this is so they can cripple their own economy and they can use their new central banker in power to essentially guide them on how to gobble up assets dirt cheap from citizens. And then they're going to redistribute it to their wealthy buddies, and the cycle is going to continue. Now, all of a sudden, the central bank is this godsend fighting against Trump like it's been the superhero all along, and it has orchestrated most of the economic crashes in the entire world. And I understand the Central Bank of Canada and America and the rest of the world, all their individual central banks are completely different, but they all work together. Okay, they all have this vision for the future. Trump hates the central bankers. He's pissed that they don't, do what he says. But the fact of the matter is the Democrats are talking about this fucking Elon Musk. He's an unelected bureaucrat who's going in and he's cutting out all of this waste and he's firing people. He's a despot. But then they worship the Fed as this god of the economy when they were installed to destroy the economy in the first place and funnel money out of the working hands of people and go into bureaucrats and paper pushers, people who basically just check financial documents and say, okay, I have more money now. How do you have more money? I just do. So my predictions of this trade war, Canada is going to buckle, but not before something happens in Ukraine. Everything right now, the linchpin in this entire system is Ukraine. This decision that Trump has done to essentially shake up that foundation out there, it has rocked confidence in the United States on the world stage. The entire structure of America changes over 4 years. If you are not prepared for that instability, which it seems like a lot of these people are not, then you're not really an ally of the United States because you don't understand how we operate. Basically, every 4 years, everything that you have known doesn't exist anymore, unless it's the same person that has gotten into power. Maybe even the same party. Even people in the same party have completely different views on how things are supposed to be done. Trump's MAGA party completely absorbed the Republicans of old, and they are nowhere to be seen. That's why guys like Mitt Romney, the entire family, the Bushes, everybody is destroyed. There is nobody left from the old guard, so to speak. Now, Donald Trump is trying to stop wars. He's trying to lower the size of the federal government. He is putting Americans first. And if that means sacrificing America's presence on the world stage, so be it. We don't want to be the world police. The entire world has told us, hey, stop being the world police. Now that we want to stop it, everybody's mad at us. Pick a side. No, never mind. You don't get to pick a side. We are picking our own side. Sorry to say it, but you're fucked. So you need to understand that we as Americans are not your friend. We are allies. Allies does not mean we just give you everything you want for nothing. Being an ally means you can come to a mutual agreement. Sorry that we're not butt buddies anymore. We were never really butt buddies. We were always the one catching. We kept saying, when's it our turn? You guys just said, oh, no. Soon. The European Union is going to have to question whether or not they're able to keep their defense and their education that they've been lauding over us, their free healthcare that they have been lauding over us. Now they can't even come to an agreement to supply the $800 billion that they promised Ukraine because lo and behold, they were holding that over Zelensky's head in order to tell him to shut Trump down in these peace negotiations. Now, the EU did what the EU does best, is they formed a committee to talk about possibly in the future thinking about supplying the money. The European Union is not a united entity. A lot of those nations are not going to commit the money that the major players inside the European Union want to commit. That's what you don't understand about the European Union. They do not function like the United States. They are a conglomeration of extremely separate entities, and they do not agree on a lot. There's a reason the UK left. Plus, on the world stage, The German government just got a majority Christian right-wing rule. It is not the same as the way that you rule in America, but the fact of the matter is they have multiple parties, and now the Christian right-wing party is in control. Canada, Pierre Poilievre, sorry, I probably butchered the fuck out of that name. I'm American, goddammit. I don't give a fuck about the French. He is not a Trump fucking lackey. All right? The guy is not going to just capitulate to Trump. What he's going to do, he's going to come to the table, he's going to figure out what Trump actually wants, and we're going to come strike a deal. Canada needs to put somebody in that isn't just hoping for this collapse to happen. They could possibly be trying to collapse the Canadian economy to force it to become a state, because that's going to allow them some of the most beautiful business opportunities in the entire... We don't want Canada as a state. You guys can keep your stupid little fucking mooses and meese and however the fuck you say moose in a plural term. You guys can keep your Alberta. You guys can keep everything. But we just gotta fucking, straighten a few things out. But if these guys stay in power for too much longer and they start threatening the United States with shutting off power to liberal states and killing Americans, you're going to essentially bite off a way more than you can chew in this regard. Canada is not strong. Everybody always likes to say, oh, we're the war crime center of the world. Okay, fight me.